Good afternoon. Thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm Beth Padera. I'm a product manager with the Weather Company. And with me today I have Thomas Sandquist, who's a sales engineer and one of our real live meteorologists. And we're so excited to be here today to talk with you about how you can leverage weather data inside of your Tableau environment and find insights for your business. So you're probably familiar with the Weather Company if you've ever checked a forecast on weather.com or checked the Weather Channel mobile app you might have on your phone on a day like this. So you kind of want to know when it's going to stop raining so you can travel back to the airport on time. And you might also be familiar with us if you went to the Iron Viz competition last night. How many of you were there? All right, excellent. It was pretty exciting to see how those contestants really visualized data and made it come to life because it does affect all of us and all of our businesses. And today we're going to talk about how we can start leveraging that great visualization capability of Tableau, bringing weather to your own data and combining that and finding specific insights for you. So we're going to give you a little bit of background about some of the industries that we work in. So we work in many different industries. And then we're going to get to the heart of the issue and really talk about how this looks for you in Tableau and how we're bringing weather to you to make it easier for you to analyze alongside your data sets. So we're going to kick things off with a short 2-minute movie to give you a little bit more background about the areas we play and history of the Weather Company.
All right. So in that video, we saw a whole bunch of different applications for weather. Check, 1, 2. Okay, perfect. We saw a whole bunch of different applications for weather data, and I want to take a brief moment to talk about, what is the Weather Company? How are we serving out our data, and really how much are we serving out? So this requires sort of a step back, talking about what the Weather Company is. So the Weather Channel app that's on your phone, also the native weather app that's on your iOS device, for example, that's all coming from us. And we're serving this out to millions of users on a daily basis. In fact, on a daily basis, we're delivering 25 billion forecasts. And even in high impact weather days, such as Hurricane Michael last week, we're talking more along the lines of 35, 36 billion a day. So highly scalable platform that's delivering this data 24/7. Now, not only were we delivering this weather data to everyone that might have our app, for example, or maybe is getting it from a local television station that perhaps is using our weather data, but many businesses are using it as well, or at least impacted by it. So here's just a few examples of how weather is impacting all kinds of different industries. Overall, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but overall we're talking $500 billion of impact a year just in the US from weather. So that really tells you the story that, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're in insurance, retail, oil and gas, everyone has a potential use for this weather data and can really make things happen with it. So we did a quick survey with some executives as part of IBM here and also outside of IBM. 100% believe that weather at least has some impact to their business. Most everyone believes that it can at least help them save money and also make money as well. So there certainly is use for weather, and people believe that there is use for weather, even at the top of many of these businesses. But what everyone should be doing more of is, instead of reactively making sense of the weather, so for example, instead of saying that weather accounted for X with our business, you can proactively deal with weather when it comes to both understanding how your business will be impacted and also the exact results that you can expect to see business-wise from any weather influence. So taking a deeper dive into some of these industries that we've been working with for quite some time here at the Weather Company, one of them is aviation. So obviously weather has a significant impact to the aviation industry. Who in this room, just a quick raise of hands, has had a flight cancellation or delay within the last 6 months due to weather? Okay, so see, I mean, that's definitely an industry heavily impacted by weather. But we've transformed it in a couple different ways, one of which has to do with turbulence. Turbulence is a big issue for airlines dealing with it on a day-to-day basis. I mean, we can talk injuries because of turbulence, obviously other issues as well, just in terms of just customer satisfaction when it comes to turbulence. Now, we have partnerships with many airlines around the globe, and we're not only providing them data, but they're also providing data back to us as well in the form of turbulence readings at least. So as soon as a flight, for example, experiences turbulence, we have the ability to take that and put it in real time into our products to let upcoming flights know, hey, we need to avoid this particular zone because the previous plane that went through here really experienced some issues there. So that's one way. Also, another way that we've transformed the airline industry is in regards to proactive weather cancellations. So maybe some of you have noticed that instead of packing your bags, heading to the airport just to find out that your flight's been canceled, maybe you've actually been told that in the comfort of your own home, maybe 6 to 12 hours ahead of time. And that's because, hey, weather is likely going to be impacting your particular flight that you're going to be on, and they were able to identify that and cancel your flight ahead of time. So that obviously has some operations positives there, also customer satisfaction. So that's just sort of one industry. That's going to talk about a few more that we work with quite a bit here at the Weather Company.
So we're also working in the energy industry, and we're working in several different aspects of the energy industry. So we know that weather is about 99% correlated with renewable energy, so solar and wind. And so we're helping providers better get a handle on when types of weather and when they can be expecting production. For utility, we're also helping them predict load within their energy grid. So we know things like, energy usage actually spikes on the third day of a heat wave, not the first. And so we can help them with these kind of insights to be able to plan where they distribute the load. We also help them with outage predictions, so being able to get their crews to an affected location prior to the storm event hitting that area so that those crews can get power restored more quickly and help bring communities back online. And that helps energy companies, utilities, in several different ways. First, customer satisfaction, right? When you've experienced a power outage, you just want to know, is it going to be a few hours? Is it, hopefully it'll be soon so I don't lose everything in my refrigerator and I can get the heat back on. And it also helps them in generating revenue back from those houses that were out of power. So once they turn it back, they can start charging you again. We're also working in energy trading, so knowing which parts of the country are experiencing abnormally hot and cold weather, and even if it's short-term to long-term forecasts, that influences how the energy markets are moving up and down. So we're also working in the insurance industry. So how many of you in the room, show of hands, if you received a text alert or a push alert from your insurer saying, in 30 minutes, where you are right now, you're going to be experiencing hail a size that could break your windshield of your car. How many of you would move your car inside? All right, pretty good, about half of which is what we're seeing also in the market for insurers that have signed up their policyholders for our alerting systems. It really helps on a couple levels. One, on a personal level, you don't have to submit a claim. You don't have to have the hassle of having your car out of service and having to find other transportation while you're getting your windshield fixed. On the insurer's side, they don't have to pay out a claim, which they hate to do. And it also helps with their customer satisfaction and gives them a meaningful way to interact with you aside from once a year when your policy renews. We'll also help insurers understand risk across all of their policies across the country, given where weather is coming. And then help them be proactive. So they might need to spin up a call center on a certain day in a certain location when they know they're going to be receiving a lot of claims, for homeowners or auto. And they can also proactively reach out to you as a policyholder to say, we know your area is going to be impacted. Here's an easy way, to submit a claim should you have to do so. We're all consumers in this room, and we all experience, weather based on what we know to be kind of normal for us and where we live. And we have retailers that take advantage of this to generate demand, with our weather-triggered advertising. So Starbucks, for example, might send a cold drink ad to someone who's experiencing warm weather compared to a cold or a hot drink ad to someone who's in a colder climate. And so we have the ability to customize those, and we know them to be twice as effective because they're delivering a relevant message for the weather that you're experiencing when you receive that ad. On the other side of the equation, we have to make sure that retailers are able to meet that demand. So if we're driving people to a Starbucks, we have to make sure they've got enough staff to handle the demand. They've got all the ingredients that they need to make a good customer experience for you too. So we wanted to share an example of a customer that we work with, which is the observatory on top of the World Trade Center in New York City. And so that exhibit is entirely indoors. However, as you might imagine, the whole draw of going to that exhibit is so that you can see far and wide out the beautiful windows and take in the vistas. So when there's a day with low visibility, they do not receive very many visitors and their ticket sales are down. So they were interested in understanding, is it just visibility that affects the number of visitors they receive, or were there other weather factors at play, and then what could they do about it? So we did a study with them and took in some of their historical data and married that with the historical weather data from New York City for those points in time, and found a couple of interesting things that they weren't even thinking about. We found that relative humidity was highly correlated with their ticket sales, which was interesting to them. They hadn't been considering that as they're monitoring the weather forecast. They also found out that for every additional hour of rain on a given day, they lost $17,000 in ticket sales. So that was a great hard number to be able to quantify the impact of weather on their business. They also sell tickets in advance for people planning a trip to New York City, so could be a couple days in advance, weeks in advance. And we found that for even if there's 1 hour of rain on that given day the person was planning to visit, that dropped their advanced ticket sales by 30%. So it got them thinking about, what can we do about this? The weather forecast might actually improve as we get closer to the day. So we might be able to send some marketing messages to draw those customers back and get those ticket sales back. They were also interested in it operationally because they have a lot of staff in the exhibit and the security to get into the exhibit. And so on those days when they're really not getting very many visitors, they have staff standing around. They know they could save money if they were able to cut back those hours ahead of time. So we work with them to give them a 14-day forecast on their ticket sales. So we could tell them on Tuesday, given the weather coming to New York City, we think your ticket sales are going to be below normal. And they can monitor that as the day gets closer and then make a call 24 hours, 48 hours in advance to cut some shifts and not replace shifts if people call in sick. They estimated they could save over $10,000 for every day that they could reduce their staff on a slow day. And anecdotally, they were sort of tracking things over the past few years, and they had 60 to 80 low days of ticket sales per year. So that adds up. It's, could be $500,000 to $1 million they could save in labor alone. So that's one example of how this could really come together. And we're so excited to be at the Tableau conference talking about weather because we've been working with Tableau to make weather much more accessible and easy to use in analytical tools such as Tableau. So I'll talk about a few ways that we're doing that. First way is that we're taking some of our data packages, historical and forecast, and we're really curating and streamlining it for analytics. So some of the issues you might encounter if you've tried to use weather data is that you can get very granular information, hourly, down to a lat long, which might be what you need. But a lot of times you're looking at matching it with your own data, which might be, say, at a zip code level. You might be looking at daily data or day part. And so we pre-aggregated our historical and our forecast data package to make it easy to marry with your own data and get up and running. So you can start to visualize your data with weather together and find some interesting insights and correlations. You might have noticed a postcard on your chair when you arrived. We're offering a free trial of our historical data and forecast data for analytics. So I think the link there is biz.weather.com/TC18. So reach out to us. We'd love to give you a free trial and get you started sort of playing around with this in your own Tableau environment. We've also, as you've seen from some of these examples, been working across various industries for a while and have built machine learning models to take in weather data and find insights with a client data set. So we're excited because what we're trying to do is what we're doing now is building piping into the Tableau environment so your data doesn't have to leave. You don't have to throw it over the fence to us to do some analytics and throw it back. We're bringing our models to you inside of Tableau. So let me walk you through how that will work. So the first thing we'll do is provide you some guidelines of how to prep your data in Tableau so it will easily be ingested by our machine learning models. Typically, clients pick a business metric. In retail, it might be sales. You might have, if you're in the service industry, it might be calls to a call center or insurance claims. Whatever the metric, doesn't really matter. Our models are able to take in that data. We marry that and match up your locations with our historical weather data, given the time frame of data that you've provided. And then we bring our machine learning models in and train them on your data set and our historical weather for each location that you've provided for us. Then we fuel that trained model with our weather data forecast going out 14 days in the future to provide you a prediction on your business metric of what's going to happen given the upcoming weather. And we're doing this back to you in a Tableau dashboard, which is great because then you can take the inherent function of Tableau and be able to play around with the data and adjust, as well as set alerts. So say, we were predicting on Tuesday that your yogurt sales are going to be low, and we know because of the trained model that that's probably because it's windy, and wind affects yogurt sales. So you can set an alert to say, hey, anytime my yogurt sales are going to drop or go above 10,000 units, send me an alert. And then I can decide what to do about that. It might be I reach out to a store manager that's affected and say, make sure that you order enough product from the warehouse so that I have enough to sell and I don't have an out of stock. So we are looking for sponsor clients to give us feedback on the process and the piping that we're installing inside of the Tableau environment. So if you have any interest in this, come up to us afterwards. So hopefully we whet your appetite about using weather data inside of your Tableau environment. We're going to provide you some examples to see what that looks like. So the first one Thomas is going to take us through is a manufacturing example.
Awesome. Thanks, Beth. So just to sort of set the table here for the dashboard that we'll be looking at here in a moment. So this is a factory that is seeing an abnormally high scrap rate during certain times of the year. We'll see the certain times of the year here in just a moment. But the idea was they thought that it might be correlated with weather. They looked into it, but they did not successfully see this correlation. After all, the factory is indoors. They're seeing the scrap rate. They're still seeing that high scrap rate no matter what kind of weather they saw, or at least that was what they thought. So we're going to dive into this dashboard. We're going to take a look at, did I get it?
Yep,
Perfect.
got it.
All right. So that top dashboard there, this is our scrap rate by date. So notice throughout most of the year here, not a very high scrap rate, especially in the winter months, early spring months, relatively quiet. However, really started to spike once we get into June, July, August, those times of year, that time of year, which does have certain characteristics, at least at this particular location where this factory was located. Now, it is an indoor factory, and again, like I mentioned, they looked into it before. They weren't seeing that weather correlation. Maybe it was just a function of production quantity. So on that bottom visualization that you're seeing there, as we go further to the right, that's actually more and more production that was simply coming out of this manufacturer. And also notice there that the scrap rate really is all over the board. Those red dots we're seeing is the scrap rate that exceeds, I believe, about a 25% threshold. So again, really no correlation there with the production quantity, but there is a correlation with the time of year. Okay. So we went through some weather variables, maybe temperature. We dove into that a little bit. There was a little bit of correlation there. Also relative humidity, a little bit of correlation there as well. However, we did have sort of a light bulb over the head moment here with dew point. So dew point's a function of temperature and humidity. We can have high or low relative humidities really any time of the year. However, only the highest dew points are going to be found, generally speaking, at least in the northern hemisphere in the summertime. So notice we had that lightning bulb go off here because once we got up towards dew points right around 12, 13 degrees Celsius, that's where we saw those highest scrap rates that we were only able to see because we had that granular historical insight that they were able to marry up against their scrap rate that they saw. Now, down towards the bottom, we were able to deliver a very granular forecast based upon that information. As we saw in the first slide of the presentation here, we're forecasting for 2.2 billion locations around the globe. That adds up to every 500 meters. So if you take every 500 meters around the globe, add all that up, that's 2.2 billion locations. So we were able to identify, hey, exactly what is that dew point that you're going to see here over the next 15 days. And notice the next week, relatively quiet. We're talking dew points around 2, 1, right around 0. And they knew that, hey, those dew points aren't going to cause too many issues for me. However, once we get towards day 12 and 13, that's where we see that spike. That's where we can expect to see that higher scrap rate. So we need to basically increase our production that we're going to see over the next week to account for those losses that we're going to expect to see right around days 12 and 13. So this is just a quick example of how weather impacts a business in a way that really nobody had thought of at that particular time. And we'll have another example here in just a moment.
All right, so our next example is in retail. And often in retail, we get requests from sort of two different parts of the business. The first would be more of a corporate planning level, so people that are trying to plan out the forecast for the sales of particular products in the different locations the retailer serves, as well as category buyers and merchants who are trying to get the right products and procure them and then allocate them across all the stores that the retailer has, the right place. At a more granular level, we get requests at the store level. So a store manager to be able to say, okay, I know given the weather coming, this is going to impact my foot traffic to my store, so I have to have enough staff on hand to deal with that. And if in the yogurt example, if he or she knows there's going to be a run on yogurt, they can make sure they order it from the distribution center in enough time to get there to meet that demand. Those are a few examples, and I think Thomas is going to take us through a Tableau dashboard for a deli.
Awesome. Thanks, Beth. So what we're looking at here, as Beth mentioned, this is Martina's Deli. So this is an output from our Weather Signals product, what Beth was speaking to earlier, where we're able to take your data, run it through our models, our proprietary models, and find what particular weather variables and parameters have the most impact for not only the location in question, but also the location and product in question as well. We are all basically wanting to buy certain products depending on what the weather is, whether we think about it or not. The weather has a tremendous influence on what we buy at the grocery store, what we might buy at the clothing store, and in this case, what we buy at the deli. So Martina's Deli has many locations here across the U.S. Some of them are being positively impacted by weather during this particular season. Up in the top right, we have our season drop down here for this visualization. In this case, we're looking at the fall. But the positively influenced locations are in blue in that particular map, whereas the negatively impacted locations are in the red color. So again, positive or negative influences from the weather are certainly possible here in this space. It's not always just a situation where a high impact weather event is just influencing a particular area in a negative fashion. It certainly is possible both ways. So down towards, up in the top right, we have a list of the weather parameters. Notice some of them have higher and lower tags because the weather does change throughout the day in pretty much every location. So when we think about it, higher maximum dew point, higher minimum temperature, those kinds of variables do matter as far as what we're choosing to do for the day from a consumer perspective. Down towards the bottom, we have the number of units sold, and also in the bottom right, we have the percentage of those products that were impacted by weather. And through these models, we're able to isolate that weather impact by factoring in things such as discounts and holidays. Allows us to find this particular weather influence. So just taking a quick dive into one particular location, in this case I'm just going to choose down in Georgia, who has a positive influence from weather here in the fall season. Notice the weather variables that are positively influencing that location: a higher relative humidity, also a higher dew point, so that's also a function of humidity. And towards the bottom, I can also see the products, the specific products that I know, hey, these sell really well in the fall season, things such as Pinot Grigio, tortellini, and pecorino cheese. Wouldn't have guessed it, but pecorino cheese sells really well in that location in the fall. So that's just one example of how retail uses historical weather data to find this type of insight. But what we're going to step into is not just looking at historical insights. I mean, that's great to know. We absolutely need to know that historical insight information, but we need to translate that into a forecast. I need to know what are the specific impacts that I'm going to see, not only from a location-to-location basis, but also a product-to-product basis at those locations that is due to weather. So here's a specific store example. This is store I that I'm looking at, and then below that is the list of specific products. And notice over the next 7 days, some of these dots are colored red, some of them are colored blue. That indicates, hey, on this particular day, I should expect to sell less of this particular product if it's colored red, or if it's colored blue, I should expect to see more of that particular product sold due to the weather conditions that are in the forecast. In this case, I'll choose Pinot Grigio, sort of a roller coaster here that we're going to see over the next week. But I notice days 3 and 4, maybe I need to bring Pinot Grigio towards the front of the store because I'm expected to see less of it. I need to counterbalance that weather impact that I'm going to see. And in the case of day 5, maybe in the meantime, I need to be stocking up because going into maybe the weekend or something like that, I'm going to see quite a bit more sales due to weather conditions taking place. So just sort of a couple actions we can take just by knowing this information at that particular store. I'm going to hop out of our dashboards here. Give you another quick example here. We're not going to do a deep dive into it, but just another example of how we can visualize weather data in context of an industry that is heavily influenced by weather. So what we're seeing here towards the top is departures and arrivals, and this was in San Francisco International Airport. And then down below that, we're seeing runway configuration. That's that bar where there's different colors, and also below that, wind speed and direction. And basically, the thought that was established here with this visualization is that wind direction is highly correlated with the runway type that you'd see at many airports. That certainly is what we'd expect to see from any airport, but also ceiling height and also visibility as well certainly have a heavy influence on airports. This is another one that might be relevant from an insurance or ground transportation perspective. This is looking at a public data set for accidents along the East Coast, and this was for the first 3 months of the year. So one interesting thing we saw here, we might think of accidents maybe being highly correlated with things such as rainfall or snowfall, which they certainly are, but sort of one variable where it actually aligned very closely with a spike in accidents is actually temperature. So we think of snowfall, well, that occurs right around freezing, generally speaking, especially along the East Coast. But we also have things such as maybe rainfall fell overnight, and I'm waking up in the morning not expecting icy conditions. Well, if that temperature is right around freezing, maybe I'm sort of lulled to sleep a little bit as a driver, and I could see some slick roads and maybe cause a spike in accidents. So that's just sort of one little interesting thing we saw with this particular data set that we took a look at in Tableau. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have many data sets that sort of cross the spectrum, both historically and also current conditions, also forecast as well. So we were able to get down to a 4-kilometer granularity from a historical data perspective, which really helps you find those very hyper-local impacts to your business. And then from a current conditions and forecast perspective, we can get down to a 500-meter granularity for those particular products, which again, sort of match the historical in terms of being able to get those very fine-tuned details that you'd want to see and take actions based upon those particular forecasted details. A couple other things that are interesting, especially likely to this audience, is probabilistic. So when we get a forecast, we're typically told it's just a number, right? 56 degrees, 63 degrees. That's certainly helpful information that we can take action upon, but maybe we need to know, hey, what is the probability of a certain event taking place? So for example, maybe I don't just want that number, we call that the deterministic forecast, but the probabilistic gives me what is the actual likelihood of me maybe hitting a 10-inch threshold for snow tomorrow. Maybe I'm a school administrator and I make the decision, hey, we're canceling school if we get 10 inches of snow, but the forecast is calling for 9 inches. So I might think that, hey, school's still on tomorrow, but when I actually look at the probabilistic, it's actually more like 30 to 40% chance of hitting that 10-inch mark. That helps me make decisions based upon that information. We also have seasonal forecasting as well. So instead of just a forecast over the next 15 days or so, we're able to get it out 7 months, basically. So we have a whole team of meteorologists dedicated towards coming up with an accurate seasonal forecast that helps you make decisions not only in the short term, but in the long term as well. We also have probabilistic forecasting here as well. So if you need to know, hey, what is this upcoming season expected to look like, in this case, of precipitation in Northwest Columbia. This had to do with a particular coffee crop that we had looked into. But sort of, if you're just looking at normals, you're going to have likely an incorrect interpretation of what the actual situation is going to be. And having our probabilistic capabilities here at the Weather Company gives you a better picture for you to make any sort of adjustments to what you're expecting from your business.
All right. Thanks, Thomas. So hopefully this whet your appetite for getting started with weather inside of your Tableau environment. As I mentioned, we're offering a free trial of our historical data for analytics and forecast data for analytics. So there's the link. Please reach out to us. We'd love to get you started and get you up and running. We have a best practices document on working with the weather data that we can give to you along with your trial to get you started. And of course, we're always here to answer questions. And if you need a little help distilling our 200 and plus weather variables down to the ones that really matter to your business, we can help you with our machine learning models inside of Tableau. We'd love to talk to you. We have several of our weather team in the room, if you guys could raise your hands. Any of us are happy to talk with you about weather. We want to get you started. We want to evangelize for weather and get you going and finding those insights for your business. So I want to leave you with 3 thoughts. We're coming to you. We're bringing weather to you in your Tableau environment. We've seen time and time again that weather matters to every business on the planet, and the real power of it is the forecast. So being able to look back at what happened, but then use that to make better decisions in the future. And the clients that we see make the best use of weather are the ones that can make those decisions earlier and earlier, like the flight cancellations, for example, or the utility company getting the crews out ahead of things so that they can recover quickly and not lose as much money and potentially make more money. So with that, thank you so much for your time today. I think we have some time for questions if we have any from the audience.
I have one.
Okay.
So how do you find the lag between when the weather gets higher and your sale Yeah, so my question was, how do you find the lag between the temperature gets higher and then your sales might be, the product sales might be starting getting higher or lower? I mean, so do you find the lag in the machine learning model in your case, or do you use Tableau to find that?
Typically, in our machine learning models, we do factor that in. So we see that in a lot of industries like retail. We were working with a liquor company, for example, and for them, the forecast on the weekend, so sitting here on Thursday, whatever the weekend forecast was what was driving their sales. Whether or not that actually happened, if the weather actually happened or not, didn't matter as much as people were reacting to the forecast. And so we're able to take all of that into account. In retail, like weekend versus weekday, day of the week matters, and so we incorporate that. Other data sets that you would be able to provide would help enrich the model, obviously. So things like promotions in retail. We take into account some basic things like holidays and day of the week, but the more data that we can ingest into the model, the better the prediction will ultimately be.
And how long do you think that forecasting model would be better? Is it like a 2 weeks forecast?
Yeah.
Is the accuracy-wise kind of thing?
Yeah, so we feed it with a 14-day forecast, but update it daily. So,
it would be a continuous thing. So
continuous thing. Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I mean, I'm just curious. You said so many billion data points that you have, right, for every 5 meters or something? 500 meters.
Yep.
500 meters. How do you get that? What is the source of that data?
It's a good question. So there's a lot of sources. There's really no just one simple answer there. But we have technology in place where we have partnerships also with government sources from around the globe. Also, our own proprietary models as well get factored in. We actually use 162 models to come with our forecasts. And we have all those points mapped out all around the globe. So that's how we're able to come to that conclusion. We're constantly adjusting and improving those forecasts as well. So it's only getting better in terms of accuracy.
Anyone else?
Just with the seasonal forecasting, like what? So with the seasonal forecasting, what sort of time periods are you looking at? Are you looking at, say, aggregated over a month? Say, I work for a beef processing business, so rainfall forecasting in particular is a huge part of our business and something that we've really struggled with. So I really like the sort of solutions in getting that data and having it usable in Tableau for the business and frequently updated. The resources we use at the moment, we get once a month, and it will give us, say, the next 1, 3, and 6 months aggregated rainfall for a region. What are you offering in that space?
So in seasonal forecasts, we go out to 7 months. And it's basically a monthly average that we're factoring in for things like temperature and precipitation.
Okay. And so is that updated, like how frequently is that 1 month view updated?
I'm trying to remember. I believe it's updated on a monthly basis.
Okay, yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, one more.
Hi, do you guys have like a natural disaster forecast, like a hurricane, for example? I know that Michael that come from the Gulf to the to the East Coast, and do you have like a route forecast so that I can map it on the Tableau? I can see what my factories get affected around the area.
So we do have some products that deliver more, instead of just a point-based forecast, it would be like a polygonal forecast, for example. So if I want to see what area is expected to see 10 inches of rain over the next week, I have the ability to do that with some of our products, and just basically it breaks down to just a GIS polygon file that could then be used in situations like that. Does that sort of sound sort of what you're asking about there?
Yeah. So basically, if there's like a route of like a Basically, if there's a route of like the hurricanes is going by the area, I need to see that what my supplier gonna get infected in that area. So if
Sure.
I can notify my supplier earlier or notify my supply chain a little bit earlier, so that would be beneficial for the company.
Sure, and we also have a product that Beth was mentioning about earlier that's heavily used in a couple different industries, but especially insurance industry as well, where you can get alerts based upon those types of locations. So if I wanted to pinpoint and map out the points that I want to be monitoring for weather, I can proactively get updates for things such as snowfall, rainfall, hurricane probabilities, things like that, that basically would give you a heads up saying, hey, these locations, I need to be alerting them or directly alert them for weather impact.
Any other questions? All right.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. And remember to fill out your survey.